Today's daily lectionary reading from the Gospel of Mark includes one of the most difficult sayings of Jesus, one that I've had more than one person come to me over the years to ask about as they wrestle with their conscience. It is Jesus' teaching that equates remarriage following divorce with adultery. In a day and age when divorce is as common as it is, even among church people, this is a teaching with which we have to struggle. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. Let's get right to the passage. There are two parts to this story, which is typical for Mark. Jesus teaches a crowd, and then afterward elaborates on its meaning with his disciples in private. Here's how Mark tells the story. Jesus left that place and went to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan, and crowds again gathered around him. And, as was his custom, he again taught them. Some Pharisees came, and to test him they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" He answered them, "What did Moses command you?" They said, "Moses allowed a man to write a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her." But Jesus said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart he wrote this commandment for you. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate." Then in the house the disciples asked him again about this matter. He said to them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery." So, several years ago, a church member in another church I served, whose brother had divorced and remarried, asked me what I thought about this. Was his brother committing adultery by living with a second wife after he had divorced his first wife? I'll be honest with you, I struggled with the question because Jesus' words are pretty unequivocal. The plain meaning of the text leaves little wiggle room. So what do we make of this? How do we deal with it? Does someone who remarries following a divorce commit adultery? I think there are two things that need to be said here. First, a commitment to marriage is a serious commitment, not one to be taken lightly. When we marry, we take a set of vows which includes the phrase, "until death do us part." I take this seriously, and as I say at almost every marriage service, marriage is not to be entered into unadvisedly or lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and in accordance with the purposes for which it was instituted by God. We Christian people take marriage seriously. It is not a throwaway commodity that we can enter into as long as it's convenient. I've heard of vows that end with the phrase, "as long as we both shall love," as if it is a temporary thing that exists only as long as it works for both parties. But on the other hand, and this is the other thing that we need to deal with, is the church since the Reformation period has understood that not every marriage is fruitful or even healthy for one or both partners. There are some marriages that become so toxic for one or both that divorce is the only faithful course of action. For example, when one partner becomes emotionally or physically abusive, that marriage is at best in serious trouble, and in most cases, I would absolutely counsel divorce. But it goes beyond even this. In the Reformation period, when the Catholic Church did not allow for divorce, as indeed it still does not, Reformation leaders observed a very simple and terrible phenomenon. Married people who could not divorce simply left their spouses and moved in with their lovers, creating the untenable situation that the church's opposition to divorce actually resulted in people living together outside of the bond of marriage. Wouldn't it be better, reasoned the reformers, to countenance divorce and remarriage rather than having people who were legally married living with other people? It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than the alternative. All of which is to say, I recognize that there are marriages that are so toxic that it is better to countenance divorce than to force people into remaining within destructive marriages. Is it the ideal? Absolutely not. Is it better than a variety of other possibilities? Absolutely. We human beings are not perfect, not by a long shot. The ideal may indeed be that we live within the bond and covenant of marriage for life, but the reality of human life is that sometimes continuing to live within that bond of marriage has devastating consequences. And when that happens, divorce may be the only faithful option. And what of remarriage after divorce? Well, if the option is either sleeping around or entering into another exclusive relationship, the choice becomes pretty simple. Enter into an exclusive covenantal bond. It may not fit the exact words of Jesus, but to us who live in a messy and fallen world, it is sometimes the only faithful option open to us. Tomorrow, the question of wealth. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do, this day and in all the days ahead.